negotiation was what it was. It was tough. It was a long process. We talked about it daily. We made an offer. I don't believe we were anywhere close to where the Bears were. And the Bears made us an offer that we thought was really unique. And very, very tough to say goodbye to a great player. But it wasn't my goal to trade Khalil when we got here. One of the reasons I'm here is because of him. Unfortunately, we had a standoff with the contract, and we could not come to terms. And the Bears made us an offer, 2 first-round draft choices, and here we are today.
Welcome back on air with Chris Shanafelt. That was Raiders head coach John Gruden meeting with the media a couple nights ago following the big blockbuster deal that sent elite pass rusher, 2016 Defensive Player of the Year Khalil Mack to the Chicago Bears. And with that, we will get a Bay Area perspective as we are now joined by Luke Straub, who covers the Raiders. He is a contributor over at RaidersWire.com, a USA Today website, and he is also the co-host of the Raider Larry Show. Luke, how's it going?
It's going well, Chris, man. Thanks for having me on, dude.
The pleasure's all mine. So first things first, what was your reaction waking up Saturday morning, 7 o'clock Chicago time, about 5 a.m. over there on the West Coast? I got to think you got an early wake-up call Saturday morning.
You are correct. I was going to sleep in about an hour that day. I was up pretty late the previous night covering some high school football. And Raider Larry, of course, gave me a text message, said, "Are you seeing this?" And I kind of knew what he was talking about, so I, of course, fired up the Twitter, and there it was. The unthinkable happened, and the reason why it was unthinkable, everyone here covering the team, beat writers that were well embedded, everyone, no one saw this coming. Quite the shock. Definitely a shocking morning on Saturday, for sure.
You know, when these mumblings first began, I mean, I for one never thought it was a true possibility that Khalil Mack would be, one, a Chicago Bear, and two, not in a Raiders uniform. Obviously, there were other teams that were linked to Khalil Mack's name, such as NFC North rival Green Bay Packers. But you look around the league and you see guys like Aaron Donald who just got his big deal with the LA Rams, and, he was holding out this summer. This was something that was occurring over last year as well. You see the situation that's going on with, although it's a totally different position, but running back Le'Veon Bell in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's still holding on to this day. It's unclear whether or not he'll be starting week 1 for them. This Khalil Mack situation seemed to have ended really quickly there with the Raiders, Luke. This was something that, this holdout, all of a sudden you wake up one day, Khalil Mack wants a new deal. He begins holding out, and who would have thought that we would have seen Khalil Mack, the last time we would see Khalil Mack in a Raiders jersey was last season.
It's true. Yeah, and you're right to point out there was lots of rumors. The Packers were the front runner. I think Vegas even had odds on that. I think the Packers were even favored over the Raiders. It turns out those were at least not crazy odds. And the Bears were in the mix as well. And you kept hearing these rumors, and there was rumors even there were reports from credible columnists and reporters around here. Dieter Kurtenbach from the Mercury News, he tweeted out that the Raiders were dragging their feet on the deal because they had confidence in Arden Key, the rookie. And that guy, that report actually got bashed by another beat reporter that said, "Come on, man, this guy's crazy, looking for clicks." So it was a really weird environment around here leading up to the trade. It was like everyone knew that there were issues. Everyone knew that Derek Carr had the huge contract. Everyone knew that the Raiders were short on salary cap space. And there's always a way to finagle around that, but the fact was they were short on salary cap space. So people knew these issues were coming up. That was the most successful draft class that Reggie McKenzie had, the general manager had, was the 2014 class. So this has been, in the future for a while now. It was coming to a head, and, people just assume that Khalil Mack was such a transcendent player, such a talented player, such a big part of the Raiders, and then you throw in, into the fact that the ownership, Coach John Gruden, they're talking about winning a Super Bowl before they leave Oakland to Las Vegas. So you figure, they're making all these moves to kind of appease the fans, bringing Marshawn Lynch in, bringing John Gruden in. It was like smooth sailing as far as like nobody was thinking about Las Vegas. And so you kind of figured that was going to be part of the whole situation as far as what the game plan was. And then all those problems that we kind of knew were in the background, the salary, like I was saying, the salary cap and all that, Derek Carr's contract, that ended up being the reason why they traded him after all that. So, and it came to a very abrupt end. It was, General Manager McKenzie said that the Aaron Donald deal had nothing to do with it. Coach John Gruden said it did have something to do with it. I think it's pretty clear it did. When that deal went down, they saw the bar and they said, well, we're not willing to pay this much for a defensive player. That was their strategy, and that's what they went with.
You just said something that really caught my attention there, Luke, and that's General Manager Reggie McKenzie. How much did he have to do with this deal? We know at the end of the day, John Gruden, the $100 million man there in Oakland, at the end of the day, I mean, he has the final say. At least that's what it seems like. And, I only played about 40 seconds of his press conference in the opening, Luke, but, just the start of that press conference, I mean, it didn't have a very, you would have thought the Raiders got nothing back. I mean, they did get something in return for this trade, 2 first-round picks, obviously highlight that, but exactly how much of an input, how much of a saying did Reggie McKenzie have in this? Because from the looks of it as of right now, it doesn't seem like that much, and it almost looks like they're kind of on 2 different pages, Reggie McKenzie and John Gruden, because even further on in that press conference, when asked about why the Raiders had to give up a second-round pick along with Mack to acquire the draft picks they got in return from Chicago, it almost seemed like Gruden threw McKenzie under the bus.
Yeah, he definitely did. Yeah, he said he had nothing to do with that, and the question as far as how much McKenzie has to do with these dealings, that we're trying to figure that out, because you have John Gruden pretty much. I think we've been assuming. I think everyone's been assuming since he had to sign the $100 million contract, and since he's been making all kinds of moves. Saying the word "I" when he's saying "I traded this person, I did this, I did that." Not really hiding it. But then when you have this deal come through, you have Coach Gruden telling the assembled media that, quote, I had nothing to do with it, talking about the negotiations for Khalil Mack. So, can assume it's Gruden, but, you listen to what he's saying, and then, Khalil Mack still is the general manager. That's been a question since John Gruden came aboard is how much is McKenzie going to be involved? And it seems like he's becoming less and less involved. And, he's still, I think it's safe for Gruden to say that, I didn't have anything to do with the negotiations, because I'm sure he doesn't have time to literally negotiate, but he's getting the updates, and he's making, like Coach Gruden said, they're all making that decision together. And you have to think that Gruden's leading the pack there.
Again, we're chatting with Luke Straub, RaidersWire.com. Luke, describe we have a very big following in Chicago. I'm in Chicago. Describe exactly the type of player the Chicago Bears are getting in Khalil Mack. I mean, this is a guy that has racked up 304 career tackles, 40 and a half sacks, and he's only heading into his 5th year now. He's in the prime of his career, 27 years old. He was the number 5 overall draft pick out of Buffalo, and many people, especially guys that have experience in the league, guys that work for the mothership, ESPN, NFL Network, former NFL general managers have been on record in saying Khalil Mack should have been the number 1 draft pick that season, that year, that 2014 NFL draft, and not Jadeveon Clowney. Obviously, it looks like Clowney's starting to pan out, but Mack was a hit in year 1.
Mack was a hit in year 1, and as you know, a hit in year 2, 3, and 4, and he's going to be a hit in year 5. I mean, the guy is an incredible player. I would kind of describe him as, he's not like a speed guy, but he can do that. He's kind of like he's a very well-rounded player. He's a rock. I mean, you put him on the end of the line, and no one's going over there. If they go over there, they're going to get tackled by Khalil Mack, or he's going to set the edge, and someone else is going to tackle that dude. Khalil Mack, it really he can guard one end of the defense. He can guard the run. He can rush the passer, of course. He can really do it all. And of course, everyone knows he had, or most know that he was an all-pro at linebacker and defensive end. And that speaks to his versatility. It also speaks to how the Raiders used him. They kind of used him for a little bit of everything. Sometimes he was down in a 3-point stance. Sometimes he was up in a 2-point stance. He was even out in coverage here and there. But when he really shines is when he can just attack. I mean, he is unreal. He's got really uncanny strength. He's like I said, he's a rock, and his arms are strong. He can just knock dudes over. He can bull rush. He can use speed or agility, mostly agility, or getting around people. He's really a spectacular player, and also he has underproduced, I feel, for how talented he is. I'll just say that, and where I'm going with that is Chicago. Not to jump the gun, but Vic Fangio over there. That's actually a real defensive coordinator. He hasn't had a very good defensive coordinator over here in Oakland thus far. So definitely the Bears are getting, one heck of a player.
And I gotta think that's even more of a hit to the Raiders fan base. They were able to bring over Paul Gunther, and the excitement with John Gruden being there, to see him work with inside a defense with somebody like Paul Gunther controlling that. I gotta think there's a lot of excitement there around Mack, and here we are now, traded to the Chicago Bears, and of course he was then signed to a 6-year, $141 million deal, $90 million guaranteed, the highest paid defensive player in NFL history. And here's a quote from Derek Carr, Raiders quarterback, of course, was drafted in the second round of the same draft class in 2014 as Khalil Mack to the Oakland Raiders. And Derek Carr, and I quote, "We planned everything when we first came in. We planned the next 10 to 15 years of our lives, same lockers, and then he ended it, we're not going to be able to win a ring together." And it kind of seemed to hit, obviously, it struck a nerve with the entire Oakland Raiders team. You seen that minutes after that trade was made on Twitter by guys like Bruce Irvin, showing his emotion through a tweet. But Derek Carr, I believe I even read somewhere that these guys were very close off the field as well, and Derek Carr even went on to explain to him, or look at him as a best friend. If the Oakland Raiders drop Week 1, LA Rams, this is a team on the up and coming, a high-powered offense that certainly the Oakland Raiders defense can use. A Khalil Mack, a big-time game changer on defense. If the Raiders drop Week 1 against the LA Rams and put on a poor defensive performance, the snapback from Raiders fans is already hard enough. How much tougher will it get if a Week 1 loss comes to the LA Rams?
I think you're right to point out if the defense struggles, it's going to be a real backlash. The team is really going to have to, keep to themselves and not read any press clippings and maybe stay off Twitter a little bit, because like you said, like very rightly pointed out with Paul Gunther, the defensive coordinator, all the fans are really looking forward. We're really looking forward to seeing Khalil Mack. You see a lot and you hear a lot of fans comment. Raider Larry was really excited about, we finally got Khalil Mack some help. Bruce Irvin was supposed to be that guy. Didn't really work out for, who knows why, really. I think mostly because they had no pressure on the inside and also because of the scheme. So yeah, if they come out Week 1 and they can't rush the passer and they can't stop the run, and it's real obvious, everyone's looking at that, the right or left side end of the defense, and just seeing who's not there as opposed to who's there, that'll be a problem. But luckily that they do have, for Derek Carr's contract, it was kind of one of the reasons why they couldn't retain Mack, but hopefully he's going to have to step up essentially. And, that's pretty clear. He's going to have to step up in a big way, Derek Carr.
Chatting with Luke Straub, RaidersWire.com, at Luke J. Straub on Twitter, and the co-host of the Raider Larry Show. Couple more questions for you, Luke, then we'll get you out of here. Really appreciate your time. Khalil Mack, what else does he do besides rush the passer? I mean, this is a guy, if you turn on his highlights, you see him being double teamed, triple teamed. There's even a story on the Chicago Tribune, I believe it was this morning, that went into describe and talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints' Sean Payton, who said that he had a Mac package, to block Khalil Mack. I mean, this is a perennial All-Pro, possible future Hall of Fame type pass rusher that the Chicago Bears are getting. What else does he bring to the defensive side of the field?
Well, he's going to make it a lot easier on the rest of the defenders on the Bears. That's for certain. He is always getting double teamed, constantly, and he can beat those double teams. So he's really going to make everyone on the team a lot better. The team is probably not going to have to blitz, just because of that factor alone. His leadership is not unique, but it's a little bit special in that he's soft spoken. He's a soft spoken guy, but he speaks just enough, and his voice is pretty deep. You probably heard it in the press conference. So when he does speak, people listen. So, and then you combine that with the freakish athleticism that people see on tape. I've constantly heard his teammates ever since he was drafted, ever since he was a rookie. His teammates are consistently in awe of what the guy does, especially when they watch film. So he definitely he raises everyone else's game. He's one of those guys. It's almost like he's a basketball player in that sense, where he's that good and that athletically gifted and talented. And he works really hard too. His work ethic is great. That is mostly comes from Derek Carr. Derek Carr always has a lot of praise for Khalil Mack's work ethic. So he's a very, off the field, on the field, well-rounded leadership, going to make it a lot easier on everyone else in that defense.
And, just from this one move, the Chicago Bears' top weakness became one of their strengths with now acquiring Khalil Mack. Of course, Leonard Floyd, former first-round draft pick out of Georgia, playing opposite side of him. You got Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman. I mean, that's just on the defensive line alone. Luke, final question for you, and that is, you recently had an article shortly after the trade to once this trade went down from the Raiders to the Bears. The Raiders now have and I think even before this trade went down, they still did, but the Raiders now have the oldest roster in the NFL to open the 2018 NFL season, and I believe this is the oldest roster to open an NFL season since, did I read 2012, maybe 2014?
Since 2012, that's right.
Since 2012. Again, a lot of excitement there in the Bay Area when John Gruden was announced team head coach. But there's been a lot of backlash from his first draft class this time around with the Raiders. What he's done in free agency, acquiring or trading for a guy like Martavis Bryant, giving up a third-round pick for him, and then just releasing him just a couple days ago, and now trading the best player on the team in Khalil Mack. And here we are now, days away from the season opener, and the Oakland Raiders now have one of the oldest, or the oldest team to open up the 2018 NFL season. This is a team that just a couple seasons ago made a playoff run. Obviously, injuries occurred, and they didn't get past the wild card round of the playoff. But this is a team that the arrow was really pointing upward for, and again, some excitement during the offseason, especially with bringing John Gruden back. But since then, it seems like the arrow is kind of pointed downward. Is that safe to say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot. You mentioned the Martavis Bryant deal. That really screams incompetence. That was just horrific on so many levels. And it was a real win now kind of move, and very confusing, and they didn't even stick with it. It's kind of nuts there. But yeah, the oldest roster is kind of like a mixture of events and kind of a little bit of long-term situation too, in my eyes. You have general manager Reggie McKenzie, 2012. He inherited a really, really old and bad roster from the late owner Al Davis, and he has not been able to reload through the draft. I think it's down to 10 players that he's drafted are on the 53-man roster currently out of 50 players he's drafted. Then you have But luckily he was able to draft Derek Carr and Khalil Mack, so they went on that run that you referred to, and so they're sitting okay, even though Reggie missed on a lot of draft picks. He hit on enough. Amari Cooper, a couple other guys, so he tried to supplement the roster with free agents, and a lot of them just didn't work out. Sean Smith, defensive back, David Amerson, defensive back, couldn't even make the Chiefs. A lot of other guys that didn't really work out, and left the team in a spot where I'm sure long, and he takes a look with some fresh eyes at what's happening here, and I'm sure he means it when he wants to say he wins a Super Bowl, but he sees the roster. He's consistently bagged on Reggie McKenzie's draft classes and the players, saying they need to step up. That's been a constant since his first press conference. Even in this last press conference, he pointed out that almost none of those players have panned out. So it is kind of like a mixture of events. Reggie McKenzie missing on the draft, missing on some free agents, and then you have Gruden coming in. He wants to get free agents anyway, veterans anyway. That's a fact, and I think it's over half the roster has been turned over. I think there's 30 new players. So bada boom, you got the oldest roster in the league. You got John Gruden, and you are in a position where you're looking at Khalil Mack, and maybe it's a better idea to get those draft picks, even though they said they wanted to win a Super Bowl. So, that definitely factors into the oldest roster. Absolutely.
Well, the Bears have been there. I remember maybe just 3, maybe 4 years ago, they had the oldest roster in the league, and Ryan Pace certainly has had his hands full and has made what looks to be the right roster moves, and maybe the Bears can have a turnaround similar to the Los Angeles Rams, or even better, the Philadelphia Eagles, like they did last year. Anyways, Luke, really appreciate your time. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can check you out at before I let you go?
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, me and my boy Raider Larry. He's got about 13,000 followers on Twitter. Most of them are Raiders fans. You can find our podcast. It's called The Raider Larry Show. We're on SoundCloud. You can find us there.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. Best of luck to you, and hopefully we could get you back on during the regular season. Thank you, man.
Well, that sounds great. I'm going to have a little bit of a different interest about those Bears this year, Chris.